Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Armoury, and we're continuing our conversion series on the US Paratroopers. Now in the previous videos we looked at some of the anti-tank teams, bazooka teams, sniper teams and observer teams, as well as an MMG team. Now we're going to be continuing with the special weapon teams in this video. This time I'll be focusing on the 75mm pack howitzer, the 60mm mortar and a medic. In terms of components, I'll be using a single US Paratroopers plastic sprue, along with the 75mm pack howitzer gun and the 60mm mortar as well. The first team we'll be focusing on is the Mortar Team. Now the US Paratrooper Mortar Teams actually only have 2 crew members. So the first crew member we're going to be building is a lying down, which will be sat to the left hand side of the mortar itself. Now for this you will need the following components. First of all, you'll need component 6, which is the prone body. You'll also need component 26, which is a M1 Garand arm, as well as component number 8, which is the legs that go along with the prone body there. And finally you also need component 25. We'll be using these to build up the actual prone Mortar Team member. We'll be making it so that he's kind of almost crawling along the ground with his rifle there. And here we have the first crew member completed for the Mortar Team. So you can see we've got this lying down pose and is holding his M1 Garand there. And if I just bring in the actual mortar itself, we're placing this particular miniature just to the left of the mortar, as you can see there. Now before we fully assemble the second Mortar Team member, we want to first of all take this component from the sprue. Now this is the Machete Arm, and this is component number 34 from the Paratrooper sprue. Now what we want to do is we want to use a hobby knife, such as this scalpel here, to remove the actual blade. So we're going to be cutting just above the hand there, and also the handle just below the hand as well. And then we're going to be smoothing off the 2 edges so it looks like the hand is just a closed fist. Now once you've removed the machete from arm 34, you need to grab yourself component 2, which are these kneeling legs here, and also component 30, which is this armor tees. Now we'll be using this to place on the right hand side of the mortar, so I'm just going to bring the mortar in again. You're placing this miniature just to roughly the right hand side like so, and we want to line up the arm so it looks like a mortar round has been dropped down the tube. I'm just going to be kind of roughly positioning it like so, and then angling the body so that it kind of follows the angle of the mortar tube itself. So here we have the completed Mortar Team load, and he's got his arm outstretched. If I just bring in the base with the other crew member on there, you can see if I just place it roughly in this kind of position, you actually get the effect that he's loading the mortar or has just dropped a mortar round into the tube. Now before we go ahead and assemble the medic, we need to make some modifications to these 2 parts here. Now these are parts 37. We've got 2 of them here. What we want to do is we want to remove the entrenching tool from the actual pouch. I'll be using a hobby knife and just pressing it down the center like so, just to separate the 2. And we're just going to file down the actual bag itself to clean off the edge. Now if you want to, you can actually go ahead and apply these entrenching tools that you have left over back to the Mortar Team members, but that is really entirely up to you. Now before we bring in some of the other components to build the medic, we need to free up a right arm from the sprue. Now for this I'm going to be using component 19, which is this arm holding the M1 Garand. Now what we want to do, in a similar fashion to the way we handle the machete, is to actually remove the rifle just above the hand and also below the hand as well. You also need to maybe remove the trigger guard as well. Just be very careful when you do this, because we want to essentially get a free right arm for this step. In addition to the components that we've already created, the right arm, the pouches here, we also need to take a few other components from the sprue. Now we'll be taking component 18, which is actually the paired arm for this rifle arm here, and also component 1, which is this running legs here. And this gives us the impression that a medic is running to the assistance of somebody. And finally, I would also recommend choosing one of the helmets that doesn't have any camo netting, as this will make it easy to paint on the medic markings later. Now in terms of other equipment, you can pretty much choose whatever else you want to add onto this miniature. However, I would recommend that these side bags here actually represent the medic pouches that will really identify this miniature as being the medic. And we want to actually place these pouches on the sides of the miniature itself, but make sure you have enough room to place the arms as well. Now this particular arm that we have on the right will actually be placed like so, as if the actual medic is reaching into one of his pouches to retrieve some bandages or morphine syringes. And here we have the completed medic. As you can see, I've got the 2 pouches towards the sides of the actual miniature. These are actual medic bags, and I've got some other generic equipment on the back there as well. Now it does actually look as though he's running. He's got his arm forward here, but then also it looks like he's reaching into a pouch, or is just holding a pouch steady as he runs. The first crew member of the 75mm pack howitzer will be the person who's pulling the firing cord. Now we want to get 2 arms which are in a sufficient pose, which could represent a pulling of a firing cord. Now we're going to be using this particular component. This is component 23 from the US Paratrooper sprue. Now again, as we've done in previous steps, we want to actually remove the weapon from the hand. We want to just basically free up the arm. So you want to cut above and below the hand as close as you can, and also trim around the elbow and also the shoulder as well, removing the webbing and also the weapon as best you can. Now you shouldn't worry too much about getting this precisely neat, because this will be tucked up against the body, and so you won't really notice a lot of the details which you can find beneath the arm like so. Now, as I mentioned before, it can be beneficial to actually assemble the gun itself and also the base, so you get an idea as to how you compose your miniatures. Now, this particular miniature will be standing on the right-hand side of the gun itself. This is where traditionally the person who's responsible for pulling the firing cord of the weapon would stand. So if I just bring in the components that we'll need, so we've obviously got component 23 that we've trimmed down from the previous step, and we also need to get component 4, which is this wide stance legs here, and also component 11, which is the left arm, which is also in a fist. Now, one thing you'll notice is if I actually assemble this miniature briefly, you can see there we've got the arm just kind of pulling up towards the chest there, and this one even more so. And if you imagine that this miniature actually gets placed, if I just bring it back the gun, placed around in this position, it looks like he's actually pulling the cord along his body and bringing up the tension, ready to actually fire the weapon. So here you have the first Howitzer crew member. Now on its own, the position looks a little bit odd, but if I just bring in the actual Howitzer itself and place him in this section here, you can see if I place his back to the front of the gun, it looks as though he's pulling the firing cord that's actually coming from the gun itself. The second Howitzer crew member is a lot more straightforward to assemble. Now for this particular miniature, you will need the following components. First of all, you'll need component 28, which is this M1 Garand slung over the shoulder. You'll also need to get yourself component 5, which is this legs that are slightly bent and hunched over. And finally, you will also need component 32, along with any other webbing and items you will need. Now this miniature will stand to the left of the Howitzer, and this pointing arm will point out like so, and this will appear that the actual trooper is pointing out targets for the gunner. And here we have the second crew member, who has an M1 Garand slung over his shoulder and is also pointing out and shouting out targets for the actual gunner. Now, in terms of the base, I'll be positioning him towards the back of the gun like so. The final crew member is very simple to build, and this will feature component 3, which are these more upright standing legs, and component 33, which are the arms that are holding the binoculars. And this particular miniature will just stand at the back of the gun, using his binoculars to spot targets for the rest of the team. Now the final member of the Howitzer team is wielding the binoculars. Now this particular miniature will be placed at the front of the actual crew base, and this guy is going to be spotting targets for the rest of the team. And here we have the completed Howitzer, Mortar Team and Medic. If you would like to try out these conversions for yourself, Warlord Games have put together a pack which features all of the components used in this video. It features a Paratrooper sprue, a metal Howitzer, and also a metal mortar as well. And that pack is available for £14, and I'll pop a link in the description below to take you directly to the Warlord Games web store where you can pick it up for yourself. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please do let me know in the comments below, along with your suggestions for what bolt action conversion videos you'd like to see me tackle in the future. To be kept up to date with all of my future content, hit the subscribe button, and also to be kept up to date with all the projects that I'm currently working on, make sure you check out both my Facebook and Instagram pages, which you can find links to in the description below. Now these tutorials take many hours to produce, and you can help support me in making more by checking out my Patreon page, which you can find a link to in the description below. From there you can donate to me from as little as $1 a month, which just really help me and support me in producing future content. And finally, if you haven't already done so, make sure you check out parts 1 and 2 of this Paratrooper conversion series. So until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.